Hi, fans of high quality entertainment. So, this is a new list from Rolling Stone that was posted October 11th. The 50 most disappointing albums of all time. Even the greatest artists screw up sometimes. That's right, I have screwed up once or twice. Here are the most iconic duds from Dylan, the Stones, and more. Now just realize if there's some current albums in this list, I might not know them. I'm more of a 60s, 70s, 80s music fan for the most part. But here we go, like I just said. Okay, so I see Michael Jackson, Bob Dylan, Axl Rose, Mick Jagger, Noel Gallagher, Tom York, and Kanye West. I've never heard Chance the Rapper. Was that a disappointing album for you rap fans out there? Radiohead, The King of Limbs. I think I have heard that album, and I think Radiohead is very, very talented, but I just prefer their earlier music. Radio, OK Computer is excellent, but I don't know. I just prefer the early, more guitar-based music. So you Radiohead fans, do you agree that The King of Limbs was disappointing? I can't talk because it's early in the morning. I need a drink. That's number 49. Yeah. Paul McCartney and Wings Wildlife. It was, I remember my brother bought it, and it just wasn't what we were expecting from Paul McCartney or Wings. Well, this was the first Wings album. But through the years, I've grown to truly love the whole album. Even the song Wildlife, which used to be one of my least favorite Paul McCartney songs. But I agree at the time, back then, it was disappointing. Not into LL Cool J. All right. Bigger and Deafer. Never heard it. Oasis, I respect them as, artists, but I'm not a big fan of them. But I've heard, I have heard their first two albums. I never heard this one, Be Here Now. So I got to fix this here. Okay, now I'm all set, I think. But yeah, I love the album cover though. George Michael, Listen Without Prejudice, Volume 1. And I don't think there was a Volume 2. But I've never heard that album. But, not really my kind of music. But definitely George Michael was a great talent. Aerosmith, yeah, I bought that album when it came out. I don't know if it was disappointing to me because I wasn't a huge Aerosmith fan. My favorite album of theirs is Toys in the Attic, and it certainly didn't compare to Toys in the Attic, but I loved some of the songs on it, and Draw the Line, the song, is my all-time favorite Aerosmith song, and I love that album cover too. Kanye West, never heard this album. The Life of Pablo. Terrible, terrible album cover. But so you Kanye West fans, was this a disappointing album? Let me know in the comment section below. Yeah, U2 Songs of Innocence. It's been 10 years since I've been a a U2 fan. This was the last album of theirs I ever bought. I was turned off, as I've said so many times, with, them and Apple iTunes, putting it on everybody's phone. It just completely turned me off the band. And I did buy, like I said, I did buy that album, and it was okay, but and then the later albums I would hear on Spotify and just wasn't interested in them. But I do love the early U2 albums, and my favorite is Octong Baby. Terence Trent D'Arby, Neither Fish Nor Flesh. I did buy his first album back in the day, which was good, but I never did hear his second album, which I don't think sold very well. Meatloaf. Bat Out of Hell 3. I never even heard Bat Out of Hell 2. The Monster is Loose. Let me know if this album was disappointing for you Meatloaf fans out there. 2006. Run DMC. Respect them, but I've never heard Back from Hell. Sugar Cubes, I never got into. Devo. Yeah, I love early Devo, and then by the time of this album, I'd just lost all interest in them. It's from what I remember hearing online, it's a very 80s, of course, sounding album with the drum machines and everything. But the first, 3 or 4 Devo albums I love. I bought, Rumors, Tusk, which is my favorite Fleetwood Mac album. But after that, I kind of gave up on them, so I've never heard Behind the Mask, and I believe there's a couple, like Lindsey Buckingham, I don't think is on this, or Stevie Nicks possibly. So, yeah, Lindsey Buckingham left the band. Okay, Stevie Nicks and Christy McVie were on the album, but Lindsey Buckingham wasn't. They had Rick Vito and Billy Burnett in the band. No idea what this is. Panic at the Disco. Pretty odd. Never heard it. Yeah, this one gets panned a lot by Sabbath fans. I think it's, it might not be as strong as their earlier albums, but it's still a great album. So I think it's underrated. But yeah, at the time, when it came out, it was disappointing. But I've grown to really love it throughout the years, even with that silly cover. Never heard Public Enemy, Muse, Sick in Our Mess Age. Thumbnail. Yeah, I was one of the millions that, bought Frampton Comes Alive, and I was anticipating his next album until, unfortunately, I saw it in the record store, and I still bought it, even though it was a little embarrassing to buy it with that cover. But yeah, it wasn't very good. And from reading Peter's book, he was rushed into recording it, I think, after all his success with the live album. And he's a great talent for sure. An excellent guitarist. And I loved him in Humble Pie. No idea who MGMT is. Red Hot. Yeah, they're one band. I don't mind them. I really like Flea. He's a Sparks fan. But I've never bought a Red Hot Chili Peppers album. But I've always read that this album, One Hot Minute, was disappointing. Yeah, I've got Pink Floyd, The Final Cut, and not, I don't care for it. Not really a fan, so that was disappointing. It was more a Roger Waters solo album. The band Cahoots, it's my favorite album by the band. So even when I bought it, because I wasn't familiar with their other albums back in the early 70s, I liked it. I wouldn't say I was a big fan of it, but in recent years, I've grown to absolutely love the album, especially the new remix of it. Yeah, so I love Cahoots. Never bought any Van Halen album. Well, their debut I bought, which is great. Yeah, I'd given up on Rod Stewart by the time of this album. The last one I bought was Never a Dull Moment, which is my favorite. So I love early Rod Stewart, and then, of course, his work with the Faces. And I do like some of his, his hit singles later on in the 70s and 80s. But I never bought Smiler. Yeah, George Harrison, Dark Horse, that was disappointing when it came out. His voice was pretty rough sounding. It's an okay record, but not one of his best to me. John Fogerty. I've never bought a John Fogerty solo album, but I love him in Creedence Clearwater Revival, and I think he's a great talent. I just never really cared for his, the songs I heard in his solo career. The Monkees, Just Us, I never bought. But I love the Monkees. Boom, Dylan and the Dead. Yeah, I've heard that album. It's not very good. Stone Roses. I think that album took quite a few years. I know I've heard that their debut was excellent. I've never heard it. And I believe this album took a few years to come out, and I guess it was disappointing. Yeah, their debut came out in 89, so 5 years later. Journey, never got into Journey. Raised on Radio. Yeah, I've got the first 4 Patti Smith Group albums. Radio Ethiopia, is that how you say it? My favorite is Easter, but I wouldn't say that this album was disappointing. I like it. Duran Duran, Thank You, where they're doing cover versions of, yeah, Ordinary World. That's a good song, but I've never heard, they do Watching the Detectives. I don't know if I want to hear that. And Bob Dylan's Lay Lady Lay. The Byrds, yeah, I remember buying that back in 1973. Yeah. And I wasn't even really into the Byrds or anything, and I love Gene Clark now with his album No Other. And I listened to that recently on Spotify, and it's actually, back in the day, it was kind of boring. But it sounds, I don't know, I was kind of impressed with it when I heard it last. Really love, all the hit songs by Tom Petty, but I never did buy any of his albums. So I've never heard Let Me Up, I've Had Enough. A Single Man. I'd given up on Elton John by then. Hawks and Doves. That's not a bad album. I like it. Never bought The Hunter by Blondie, but I did buy Parallel Lines, which is excellent. Flick of the Switch, I've heard that's not a very good album, but of course, every every album has its fans. Getting into the top 10 soon. Yeah, Lou Reed, his debut album. I actually like it. I think it's underrated. It's not a great album, but I think it's a very good album, and it's just that the production is pretty flat. Yeah, and Steve Howe and Rick Wakeman play on it. Top 10. I never bought, I used to buy Michael Jackson albums like Bad and Thriller and enjoy them just like millions of others. But yeah, by the time this album came out, I'd kind of given up on him. What a surprise. Yeah. That is my favorite Yes album. It took me a few years to really appreciate it, but I love it. And my brother, remember my brother was a bigger fan of Yes than I was back in 1973. Yeah, and I don't think he was disappointed at all with this album. I never bought that. No. I bought Songs in the Key of Life on vinyl back in the day, but I don't think I've even heard this album. Number 7. It's the Beach Boys. I love the Beach Boys. That's not my favorite album by them, but it's really good. Is it Pet Sounds? No, but yeah, I really like that album. Yeah, Human Touch. There were two albums that came out at the same time, Human Touch and Lucky Town. Yeah, I bought them. My favorite of his is Tunnel of Love, but and the album cover is so horrible. Guns N' Roses, the album that took years to come out or to create. I think I did Does This Album Suck for this? And I even forget what my I even forget if it did suck or not. It probably did. 4, yeah, it was disappointing after Let's Dance, but it's not a bad album. And Loving the Alien is great. Blue Jean, it's got some good songs on it. Bob Dylan Self-Portrait. Yeah, that was quite the shock when that came out in 1970. I think it's been reevaluated over the years, but I'm just not a big, I do like him, but I'm not a big Bob Dylan fan, but I have heard the album. It was good. That's a classic. I've always loved this album. Their Satanic Majesty's Request. Of course, they're basically ripping off Sgt. Pepper with the album cover and even the whole premise, but still, it's got my favorite Rolling Stone song, 2000 Light Years from Home, on it, and yeah, She's a Rainbow. What's number 1? It's probably a Beatles album. Oh, Beatles related. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think back of when the album came out, and my brother bought it. I think we liked it. I didn't care for the live disc with Frank Zappa, even though I'm a huge Frank Zappa fan. But I love the songs. I especially love the Yoko Ono songs, Sisters Oh Sisters and We're All Water. But even John's songs, I mean, they're, of course, the whole premise is dated, but that's what happens when the years go by. And I'm hoping there's going to be a remix of it soon. So yeah, I would love your thoughts on any of these albums in the comment section below. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye.